And
Morning. Morning.
call the meeting to order, and I really want to talk about our program last night. But first, did everyone get a chance to read the minutes, since Chad's so good about sending them out early?
Yes.
Any amendments or any changes on the minutes? I think it would be Aaron
No.
Mannix who would know for sure if we got anything wrong. Okay, so I move to approve the minutes. This is December 3rd. I see Peter second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved from December 3rd. One thing I did want to just say when I was reviewing the minutes, and we can talk about this at a later meeting if you want, but Aaron and Chad, you are on the Facebook page. So
Yeah.
we could talk offline about how that might be going, because I know there was, the town was helping with that. Okay, so I think most of you were able to come to the program last night. And Peter, I really apologize that somehow you didn't get the final version of the flyer, but it looked like
Sarah, I think that's largely on me. I thought I had the final one and the last one came in and I deleted it. So, but I got a few people on because I got emails and I got them on. So that's on me. Don't worry about it.
Good for you for sending it out to so many people and getting some people on. Wondering if anyone has reactions to how it went or how you think it went or any thoughts?
I thought it went really, really well. I thought that David had so much information and he's just very open-minded about it. He doesn't come to it with a preconceived notion whether Madison should do one thing or another, which I think is really good. And I thought everybody came away from it knowing a lot more than they did.
I agree. I'm going to eat my breakfast, so you don't need to watch me. I thought I really got the most out of him. I thought he did a wonderful job. I just wish that he could say it all again for more members of the community to hear all of the pros for having affordable housing and how it's worked in other towns. I hope if we have an in-person meeting that he comes again and shows that, uses his PowerPoint and gives his talk. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. Will that be posted shortly on the web page for the town? And then I guess I'm wondering, could we have that PowerPoint sent to each of us? So, because I would send it out, just make sure that people see it. They have to go. They don't have to go find it. They just have it right there, because I think it is a pretty instructive document. It's just sort of a primer on what we're trying to do here. So
I agree.
I will work on getting it posted today.
Thanks,
and
Heather.
I can also forward out the program like he had, the PowerPoint for him.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I didn't think about just sending out the PowerPoint to people. And so it will be posted, and partly that's why I talked about our Facebook page. It could be posted there. And I think also we should think about, do we want to have like another program in January where we just replay it? I think, I'm speaking for myself, but it's so busy that sometimes I get a recording of something that I really want to watch, but I never do, as opposed to the meeting. So if we like put another meeting, let's say in January, and just played it, that could work.
I think that's a great idea. I do.
Yeah.
I tried to fix the graphics though, because a lot of the screen was
You
cut
couldn't
off.
read half of it. Maybe if all of our pictures hadn't been, I don't know what it was, but I felt like erasing all of us, not knowing how to do that, and just having the whole screen.
No, David is very talented, but
he's
messed up that PowerPoint. That was the one that he did that. So, and then I think a lot of people got on and just figured it must be me. But it was not you. So, and Heather had run through it with him and it was fine. And as Heather said to me, I don't think it took away that much, but that was,
if you're showing it separately without him there reading it, at the same time, you would really need the whole screen.
You would have it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna take a
so-
bite. Okay.
Sarah, just as far as the next steps, are we thinking that we're gonna like have a part 2 where it's gonna be like, okay, we've established that there's a need for affordable housing, and now okay, what are our next steps? And you know, sort of an educational forum on that topic.
I mean, I have an answer to that, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm responding to things that I'm seeing on like the various Madison Facebook pages where, you know, there are people who are, so I consider like last night to be sort of like an affordable housing 101 sort of thing. And, you know, there are people who are a little bit more, maybe know a little bit more and are, you know, so I think there's also a need to kind of get a little bit more into the details or the execution of how this might look in Madison. As well, you know, as an opportunity to educate and also maybe to get feedback. And maybe that's what our meetings are for, but I just wondered if we were going to do a series, if that could be something that we might want to think about as a part 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up because I have bad manners and I realized that I did not introduce Al Goldberg today. Al, forgive me. I think I'm so used to seeing you on different meetings that I just figured everyone knows you. So I apologize. It is the fever talking, and so I am sorry. Al is, as you probably, I think, I don't know if everyone knows him. It just seems to me everyone knows him. Al is on the Board of Selectmen and has graciously agreed to be the liaison. Of course, Erin is staying on, and we're very happy that she is. But since she chose not to run again, there was some question about whether she can be the liaison. So, Al, I think your official title is liaison to the Board of Selectmen and just basic helper as usual, or?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. But my job is to be to work with the committee and your chairman to make sure that the resources that you need are available to you as a committee. My job is also to make sure that the selectmen Erin and I will work together to make sure the selectmen are aware of how the committee is progressing. And in the opposite direction, I will help you understand what the selectmen's current thinking is about the progress you're making and the ideas you're coming up with. So I am not a voting member of this body. I am simply here to provide advice from time to time and not to try to influence any of your policy making or report writing. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Al, and I am sorry. We're happy to have you aboard. So, Erin, back to your question. I agree very much. I think this was sort of Housing 101, and I feel there are people who still need this who weren't there last night.
Sure.
So it would be nice to keep putting this one out, but you're talking about a more advanced one, sort of like when the person asked the question, when are you going to give us the list? It was sort of like, I don't need to know anything about affordable housing. Just tell me which plots of land you're going after.
Right.
So I think that is something that we want to talk about probably even at our next meeting, because that should be happening probably January, February, and March. In the meantime, I'm going to slightly move us along because today, what I really do want to get to is, I think what we have down is number 4, which is talking about how we're going to finish the plan. We know we have John helping us. We have Erin as well, and Erin Mannix. And we want to talk about what are the steps we need to take so that we have a finished, robust plan in June. at the same time while we're working on these other things. So I will put educational forums on for next time, and maybe we can all think about what step 2 might look like. I thought this one, I don't remember how we came up with the having Elaine and having Crystal, but I thought, David did the bulk of everything, but then I felt like they were crucial pieces to hear, this is all we have in Madison, but also you probably don't even know we have this, like it hasn't increased traffic or hasn't, made a much of a dent in, there's 100 people living in these units that are really well maintained, and then hearing from Crystal what's going on, I thought that was very helpful. So I
thought that was helpful too, Sarah. Crystal's identification of need. I mean, you could almost have an entire forum based on that. I thought that was really valuable.
I agree.
In fact, so maybe we want to, on our own, sort of brainstorm what are the things that we would really want, what are the educational forums we'd want to have. This one, quite frankly, wasn't that hard to put together. I think, and this is probably on me, we could have done a better job of publicizing it. But so, I hear need, I hear like the next step, what do we intend to build, or what are we thinking of? Maybe we want to just brainstorm, and at our next meeting, we'll talk about, people that we could actually invite and what we could do. I do want to move along and just ask, was anyone able to look through the survey results from the SCROG?
I did, just got them.
I glanced at them, Sarah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
with pretty low expectations for what that would tell us, and I don't think it was terribly revealing.
So I guess I had the same low expectations that you had, Peter, but I have to say, I keep in mind that we had almost 1,000 people respond from Madison. So that's a pretty significant number. It was a fourth of the survey, first of all, but it's also a pretty significant number from our population, right? I mean, still very low, but nevertheless. And I thought, looking at it, it was overwhelmingly, to the extent you can understand what some of it says, pretty much for public house, for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Agree.
And yet gave us a roadmap of things that people are worried about. Of course, we asked about it, but like, will it increase traffic? Will it, and I think if you, and so if people haven't really had a chance to digest it, we are going to have the meeting with the SCROG where they'll help us digest it. But I do think it's worth going through carefully and focusing especially on what types of, the supply. I think people said, the supply was sort of all over the place. Some of these questions that we thought were confusing. And so I wouldn't make too much of them, but what types of impacts would the rental housing have? I thought what was interesting is that people said things like it would increase traffic. It might even have a negative impact on the level of public services. But then those same people said that it would mostly have a positive impact on the community. So
yeah, I noticed that too. That kind of, it
Well, the
contradicts
one,
itself. There was
sorry,
a
go
little
ahead, Wendy. Go.
That's all right, Matt, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go, please.
No, I'm done. Go ahead, Matt.
Sorry. No, I thought that the one where do you have an obligation? It was 54% yes, 37% opposed, 12% undecided. In my mind, those are like landslide numbers. I thought that was really interesting. So I thought there's some really valuable information coming out of that.
I agree, and I couldn't help but think that perhaps the survey was skewed to people who were thinking about this issue and hoping to see affordable housing. I mean, the people who answered it, but even knowing that there were 1,000 of those people who took the time to answer it, I thought was good to know. And I thought, one thing we really wanted to do is hear from Madison. And I think, in terms of the negative impact on certain things, I think that's worth reviewing. an increase in traffic, for example. I think Aaron could probably speak to this better than I could, but it's something people talk about when new developments come in. And so really giving that good thought, it sort of gives you a roadmap to what would be successful, because these are people who think this would be the case, but still want to mostly build affordable housing. So in any case, there is a meeting on the calendar to meet with SCROG. And I think, Heather, you sent that out to everyone, right? To the extent you're able to be there, I think it might be worthwhile. They might. And if you're not able to be there, I intend to be there. And I think a few of us intend to be there, and we will report back to the group. So I would just make a plug.
I'm sorry, Sarah, when is it?
Yeah. You know what? I don't have.
I think it's the 14th of January
That sounds right. January 14th.
at 1 p.m.
I think I will forward it out again, because I don't think Al, and I don't know if John
Fine.
was on there either.
I don't think I saw it. Okay,
And,
thank
and
you.
Aaron is right. It's January 14th at 1, and it's a Zoom.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. And so Heather will forward it again. And to the extent you can come, we welcome you. And like
that's going to be, if that's going to be a discussion that's Madison specific, right? Because they're doing them for all the different, they're doing them individually for each town.
Yes, and that's the
Okay.
one that, in many towns, I think they're just doing for the first select person, or, and we said you're allowed to bring whoever you want. And we said, we all want to come. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. So, I do want to just say, if you haven't looked over the results, it's worth looking them over. Although, Peter, I hear what you're saying. I do want to move on to Aaron and John. Obviously, this group is tasked with finishing a plan. And that plan has to be done by June of 2022. But we would like to get it done much before that, because we want that plan to we want to run it by planning and zoning, or at least, let them know what we're doing. And also obviously by the Board of Selectmen. So we're working backwards. And of course, John has done these plans in different places. But Aaron and John really wanted to talk to us today about what are our next steps in finishing the plan. And that sort of goes hand in hand with what are our next steps towards actually building affordable housing, but it's also slightly different. So I'm going to turn it over to John and Aaron to sort of talk about what are the next steps and work backwards from June, so that we make sure that this committee is on track. So thank you, John and Aaron.
Aaron, you beat me to unmuting, so that means you have to speak first.
I saw that it was like Family Feud right there. That was very good.
I'll know better
It's
for
the
next
answer,
time, John.
what 100 people would say.
I think, yes, so we have had some preliminary meetings with John to employ his services and some guidance in directing the committee and myself as well to assist us in drafting our affordable housing plan. John and I kind of initially broke down the process into 3 steps, essentially, that we need to focus on as a whole, and it would make sense, I think, to break that down over the next few months. And John can fill in a little bit more here as well with some details for each section, but ultimately, we're going to need to evaluate what our existing conditions are, what our housing stock is, how many affordable units, what our existing conditions in town are. And then, as we kind of touched upon last time, some of our existing zoning regulations, we're going to do a regulatory analysis of what we have in place, not necessarily just with the zoning regulations, but other types of relief as well, and identifying any potential problem areas. And then,
I'm sorry, Aaron, what did you said zoning, and I just missed the not just
other,
zoning,
other incentives, other opportunities, whether tax incentives, things like that, other tools that are available. And then, or any limitations, I should say, identifying where limitations are, and then ultimately coming up with some goals and recommended policy changes. So I think if we tackle those, you know, we do meet twice a month. You of course have, we kind of talked about whether or not we want to have a little longer meeting sometimes, or maybe the need for a special meeting from time to time. And we do have that flexibility. I think we can keep with our Fridays, since that's working for everybody, at least for now, and see where we go. But yes, you know, hopefully using maybe the 2 meetings in January to kind of go through what we have for existing, and then moving forward and trying to identify piece by piece here our areas of the plan that we would like to incorporate. And the only other thing that I wanted to kind of get some guidance on from you is this second survey that the committee is looking to put out, and what kind of time frame you're looking for that, because those results would be helpful as well. And John, do you have any?
So, you know, when I was looking at the SCROG survey and hearing what I heard last night, I feel like we're ready to do that second survey. And I know, was it Wendy, Matt, and Andrea who were on it, but we were waiting for the SCROG results. So I don't know if the 3 of you want to meet over the next, I know it's, you know, coming up to holiday time, but I don't know if you can find a time between our next meeting and sort of present some things to the group. But Erin, I want to just go back to what you said, evaluate existing housing stock. Is that something that you and John would do and then present to us?
Right, we're going to have to do some legwork in the background to present to the committee. Yes.
And much of it, you know, is we're not, you know, proposing to go around and count the houses. This is, you know, going to be drawn from existing sources, U.S. Census, community, you know, the American Community Survey, Department of Housing, Partnership for Strong Communities. So sort of like best available sources for what our existing both housing and population demographics and trends are.
Okay. And then the only thing I heard you say that would be January, but and then I heard you say, you know, doing some sort of regulatory analysis, which I think, would that then be February? I just wonder if they could be done at the same time, because to be honest, we're not doing it, right? We're just listening to you present on it. So I guess we defer to your timeline. But it seems to me the sooner we get this information, the easier it'll be for us to weigh in on the goals, which is what this committee is doing.
Sure. Those 2 things could be done concurrently, because we don't really know, you know, need to know if there are, you know, 7,500 houses or 8,500 houses to sort of dig into the zoning regulations and see what they say. We can, And
I'm sorry, when you say evaluate existing housing, is that what it is, coming up with the number, or is it's not looking at plots of land? That's what it is, just the number and the affordable? Because I think we have those numbers.
Yeah, well, so it's more than just the number, and it's more than just the number of affordable. There are a lot of data pieces out there that do a breakdown in terms of the type of unit, whether it's single family detached, whether it's single family attached, whether it's multifamily, whether it's you know, a trailer or an RV, as well as there are numbers on cost burden and affordability for owners versus cost burden for renters, and then you know, sort of population numbers and trends also is, you know, is Madison aging? Is Madison getting younger? Is Madison shrinking? What, you know, and so what are some of the projected housing needs? You know, if Madison, like just about every town in Connecticut, is aging, you know, then we need to sort of let that inform the housing profile for, you know, seniors and folks that may be looking to downsize or maybe looking to have resources closer to the town center where it's walkable and you don't have to drive quite as far from the northerly extents of Madison. So, you know, it's sort of a combination of the existing housing stock and profile to the population demographics as well.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I guess and Erin, I'll let you go back to this, but that information, what you're saying, John, I think would be very helpful to us. I do think that what we have right now on the SCROG, what David Fink presented yesterday, we have a lot of that data. So it sounds like you're just saying you'll collect it all in one place. That won't be the bulk of it. Where I feel like we really have just a void and we don't have the data is the regulatory analysis. That's so, I really appreciate that we would have that. And I don't know, Peter, if this is something that you would weigh in on too, or, but I don't know, Erin, if you're thinking you would just do a, I think it'd be helpful to know what's going on in Madison, but also I think we've asked this question before, what's worked in other places? What is a zoning change, for example, that's been made that has led to affordable housing? And it sounds like a lot of towns in Connecticut are sort of on the same timeline. So we might not have that data exactly, but maybe there are other places we can look at so that we could have some concrete from you or Peter or Pete, I don't know, some concrete something. Yeah, please.
Let me just jump in. Erin, check me here. I mean, we've got some affordable housing regs, and I guess I would say in reading them, maybe they need to be refreshed a bit, but I don't think they're creating anything that's creating a barrier to affordable housing in this town.
Oh.
Would you agree? I mean, if people want to build it, they can come. I mean, obviously 830G is a different issue, but
there's, I believe there's minimum lot areas.
Okay, but I mean, it's not sitting there, closing off affordable housing that I can gather, at least when I read it. I mean, it doesn't say that much, frankly.
But I think what Erin showed us in her presentation, was it last time, was that, areas are zoned in certain ways. And so that will say that will inform how many units can be put on each. And so I think that's what we're talking about. Although, Peter, you raise a very good point, which, we should probably read those regs. So if those could be circulated, they're on
the website. They're on the town's website. All zoning regs are there.
So
Right.
if you could just,
we can have that as a more friendly, detailed breaking down for each member.
That would be great.
In preparation for our meeting where we're going to discuss regulatory analysis, I'll have a packet for you ahead of time that you can.
I really
look
appreciate
through.
that. And
I think that's the way.
Take nothing away from the town website, but I know people and
so, kind of sometimes searching through the regs, they're not all that user friendly at times either.
I suspect someone like Peter and like me, we enjoy things like that, but that might not be everybody's cup of tea. So thank you, Erin, for.
Well, one of the things that's nice about Zoom is that you're on your computer and I can pull down the zoning regs from Dropbox and look at them during a planning and zoning meeting. It's actually really helpful. You can't do that when you're in person,
Yeah, you have to bring your binder.
I wonder if some organization has put together a town by town analysis of zoning regs or affordable housing data, because like, for example, CCM, I know when we were looking at putting together an ethics policy for the town, they gave us this great chart of town by town across Connecticut, what type of ethics policy they had. It was broken down by like 10 different categories, just to kind of see what other towns were doing. So I'm just curious if either CCM or some kind of more organization that might be more specific to zoning might have something like that. I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that.
I want to say that I think that makes sense. Again, this is, and I mean to take nothing away from Connecticut, but this is, something that's going on all over all towns in Connecticut. And so I think it would be very interesting, Erin and John, to hear where people have been successful, but I don't want to get into a situation where it's, the uninformed leading the uninformed. And I mean by that only if someone were to look at Madison and say, well, what have you done? Right now, we have not created a lot of affordable housing. So I think it might be really instructive to look somewhere where they have created some affordable housing over the past few years, and then what they did to create that. Does that make sense? As opposed to just.
It does.
Yeah.
But Dave pointed out at least a half a dozen of towns last night who have affordable mixed use or affordable housing, not mixed use, mixed income, affordable housing. So I didn't know if, I see your point. So I think thinking creatively, yeah, certainly we should go outside of Connecticut. The thing that Connecticut towns have in common is they're all operating under the same statutory framework of Connecticut. And I don't know how, how much that plays into it as well. Anyway, it was just a thought as we're compiling information and just trying to be efficient as far as our data gathering.
Okay.
I think if we can find good examples of projects, and we don't need to find, a town in Connecticut. I don't think there is a town in Connecticut that has sort of figured it out and is the gold standard for this.
Right,
I think
right.
There's a lot of towns that have done little projects or little regulation changes that have been effective. And I think what we can do is compile a couple of representative case studies to learn from, rather than saying, oh, we've got to be like Ridgefield because they nailed
Right.
it. Like
Right.
we're not going to see that. Yeah.
Right.
How would you fit in the second survey as far as the time frame? What would you like to see? When would that happen?
When do you want it?
Sooner than later. I think we can roll it out in January. I think that would be useful, and keep it open for a month or something like that. I don't think it'll really slow us down.
John and Aaron, what are some things that you'd like to see from that second survey? So, we have some questions, and we're really trying to get at the heart of what Scrog was getting at a bit of. What do you think affordable housing is really going to do, and do you support it or not? But for example, if we had a zoning change we wanted to make, we could put that on the survey, or we could explain it on the survey, but maybe that's too detailed. What would you hope would be the data we could collect for this plan that would be helpful for the second survey?
I think, and I need to go back and take another look at the Scrog survey to see if they ask these things. But sort of the two main things I'd be curious about would be, number one, the sorts, the people's opinion about the sorts of demographics that housing will be needed for, which is to say, seniors, young professionals, families, empty nesters, whatever. So, service professionals, whatever. If we could kind of get a sense of people's own read of what the demographics. And then the second, I would like to ask some questions about geography, about whether people believe that there should be more housing. Obviously, a lot of the current multifamily housing has been focused very close to the town center and Railroad Avenue and Bradley, and there's a lot of focus there. But to get a sense of if people are in agreement with that trend, or if they would like to see more scattered developments, throughout town. Basically the question of sort of scattered versus focused, and if it's focused, where. So a little bit of a geographic question also.
That makes sense. And I don't know how we tease this out in Madison, but one thing I've seen is there are people who have opposed some multifamily housing that have come to me to say, I do not oppose affordable housing. These are not affordable projects. And so I think we just want to be mindful of that. Last night there were questions, is Bradley Road an affordable housing place? So sometimes I think people think that these multifamily things that we're building are affordable, but they're not. But I have had people who were in opposition come to me to say, I want you to understand that I wouldn't be opposing this in the same way. So I don't know how we tease that out in a survey. That seems like a heavy lift for Andrea and Wendy and Matt, but it's something to consider. Sorry, Erin. So I think we left you at regulatory analysis, and that might happen somewhere in January, February.
Sure. We can do, we can pull together the housing stock profile info and some demographics at the same time as the regulatory, so you can get through them both in January. I think maybe we could, my suggestion would be for our first meeting in January to kind of have the draft survey ready, and we can finalize that to get that out. I think our first meeting, that's another item on our agenda, I think, is just to confirm our meeting schedule. But I think that's January 7th.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about that only because we've been doing every other Friday.
Oh, is it? Okay, I thought we were the first and third.
So, it would be the 31st. I have a feeling we are not meeting on that day.
Okay.
And then the question is, do we want to go to the 7th, or is there someone who's much more organized than I am, who's calendared it out for till June, and then we could, we'll stick with our schedule. But that's helpful. I wonder when you talk about goals, the same way Erin said, looking at different towns, I wonder if, John, I know you've written a bunch of these, if we could compile goals that different towns have from their plans right now. So we could look at goals. It doesn't have to be, you don't even have to say which town did what, but just like maybe like a survey of, here are, 20 goals that have come up from different plans to help us early on start thinking about what our goals could be, and also how specific they are, because my sense is they want to hear us be specific. And yet my sense is, correct me if I'm wrong, John, that these plans aren't terribly specific in terms of plots of land or next steps or.
Yeah, no, well, so first off, we can definitely provide you with sort of the, I don't know, like a menu of options that a number of communities have taken on. And I think sort of like, sort of the big picture goals. And so you can kind of see what the universe of sort of current strategies are out there. In terms of specificity, it's, there is no existing state rubric for what these plans need to look like. So if this town wants to be very specific, there's nothing to prevent you from doing that. I mean, in many of our towns, we are not identifying specific parcels of land. In Essex, we did. Based on some objective criteria, which is to say, in one of the traditional village centers of Essex, or along a main transportation corridor, such that transit might be available within, on a sidewalk within walking distance of community amenities, and larger than 3 or 4 acres, so that there could be some density there. And putting all that category into a GIS analysis, it spit out a half a dozen parcels, and we called those out on a map. But that's an exercise that a lot of towns aren't necessarily doing. And Madison could go either way with that. But there's no state standard for what these plans need to look like.
John, what did you do on Old Saybrook? I forget. I've got the document somewhere. Did you have a map there, or was it less specific?
We did not have a map. We did. The only thing we did call out was to say, higher density should be focused basically south of I-95 because that's where all the resources and amenities, and that's where the train station is, and the sidewalk network. And then we also called out that there should be an analysis. We didn't do this analysis, but said one of the action steps should be an analysis of town-owned or controlled properties to see if there were any, tax foreclosure properties that weren't, it's not a town park or not a school or not the transfer station or something like that, that might be available for redevelopment. so we sort of called out that as an action step. We didn't actually do that municipal property mapping, but we did do in the little town of Hampton where I did this. We actually did that municipal property mapping and called out, 3 or 4 parcels that the town just kind of had randomly that weren't, part of a park or weren't earmarked for something. So that's an example of something we could do.
You also, John, you called out specific numbers of in Old Saybrook of, the quantity of housing that you wanted, the
Right,
volume.
and specifically in terms of accessory apartments or deed restricted accessory apartments and things like
Yeah.
that, yeah. Mhm. Just sort of benchmarks. And again, to be clear, two quick points about that is, just as there is no rubric or state requirement for what the plan needs to look like, there's also no monitoring or enforcement at the state level. So when we hand this into the state in June, they'll basically just say, thank you, it's been recorded, it's been received. No one's kind of coming back from the state, at least at this point. And 3 years down the road and saying, hey, you guys haven't made any progress on this, or, you tell me your accessory apartment numbers. Like, there is no enforcement or monitoring from the state level. So this is, any holding of feet to the fire is entirely self-directed. And then I'm sorry, Peter, just quite quickly. And then the other point is, I think at the very beginning, what Sarah was talking about this is we do statutorily have to get this plan out there, but it should not interrupt, I think, the larger purpose of this committee. And hopefully will just help direct, the future actions and continuations of this committee in terms of making, affordable opportunities happen. So this is an administrative thing we have to get through, but it shouldn't indicate a conclusion of our activity here, but really kind of to charge you up and give you some action steps.
John, do you think the plan should be written with an eye towards the town using this for an 830G moratorium appeal? Where we theoretically buy more time to show progress along, towards the 10, which we all know is going to be difficult to achieve?
Yeah, to me, that's an entirely separate question. I guess the value of a moratorium is if the town is being so overwhelmed by applications, by specifically 830G applications, that it can't get its regulatory act together, or it can't fix some things that are clearly broken. And this has happened in Milford and in Westport, where they have, every month they've got 3 or 4 new applications. The purpose of a moratorium is to sort of hit pause and get your regulatory act in order, or take some action steps to fix something that's flawed. I think Madison should ask itself, is there something sort of really fundamentally flawed, and are we so overwhelmed with these applications that we just sort of can't function as a regulatory entity? I just don't think we got to get to 2.5% so we can trigger that moratorium. What's the point of the moratorium? So anyway, but we
haven't been flooded yet, but we have, as Aaron well knows, 2 830Gs right now on our docket. So it's maybe that's portends more to come. Who knows?
Maybe it does. I mean, but if looking in the long scope of Madison's history, there's been maybe 5 overall in the 30 years that 830G has been a law. It just feels like a lot right now because there's more than one. But that's a separate question we can talk about.
Thank you.
I think it might be less about how many applications and more, about talking points. It seems that people are very aware of, what can happen if we don't have the right amount of stock. But the point I try to make over and over again is, we needed to have started 20 years ago to have the amount of stock that would keep it so that we're insulated from that. I mean, I don't know what to say about that, except it is sort of what it is. I do want to say, Al, it sounds like we will already put you to work, because what I hear John saying is that And I think it's how we've all felt from the beginning, that the plan should not be the conclusion here. But in fact, the name of our committee is that the plan, right? I mean, we are the point of putting us together was to write the plan and only the plan. I can't help but think that that was the vision of writing these plans. It's sort of like an honor system. You're writing a plan, as John said, that isn't going to go anywhere, doesn't have to do anything. And there are definitely towns that are checking a box, and we have always come together and hoped that we wouldn't be checking a box. And so the question to the Board of Selectmen is, do they have the appetite to make the plan not our goal, which might mean that we change the name as of June. And we think about, I think to write a plan and then not have a group of people of
Carry
some
out.
sort
Yeah.
trying to help the plan doesn't make much sense. And that probably will be one of our goals. But nevertheless, it might be something we could start early and ask, because John said it shouldn't be the conclusion. And I think we all feel that way. But in fact, it is our charge that that would be the conclusion.
It's difficult to generalize on behalf of my colleagues, but Sarah, I believe this Board of Selectmen does have the appetite to and believes the public is ready for a serious policy discussion about our future. So I would encourage this committee to be provocative, to identify the thorniest of issues which the townspeople need to debate and which the elements of town government will need to resolve. So I would encourage boldness and provocativeness on the part of whatever comes out of this committee. I believe, as you've indicated, Sarah, probably the very first recommendation will be that this committee or this initiative be made permanent, and that it continues onward, not just as an ad hoc enterprise. I do believe this community is ready to have its discussion. I appreciate the state sort of pushing us into this, because I think towns like Madison have been very reluctant in the past. I think elected leaders have been reluctant to start the conversation. But I believe the current administration does believe the public is ready for this conversation. Did I address what you asked me, or?
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. I think, you know, and I think one of the questions is, do we wait until June? And maybe the answer is yes, but it's a thought of continuing, just a thought of if it's not going to be the conclusion, then maybe we need to change the name. But in any case, I do have one question, and this maybe is for John, and I don't know exactly how to ask it, but it seems like other plans have said, like you said, they identified land by transportation south of, 95. And I guess I'm wondering, how do we come to those conclusions? So we can survey people in Madison, but one thing that's telling when you look at the SCROG survey is that those are almost all homeowners. And if you look at the income breakdown, they're not the ones who are going to benefit from the affordable housing, the people who answered. So it's just a Sarah Mervine belief. I have a belief in Connecticut that a lot of the working poor or people who are 80% AMI, they have cars, and that we always say it has to be by this and it has to be by that. But it's really hard to live in Connecticut, even if you're right by a train station, without a car. I mean, it's really hard to just get to Stop and Shop. We just don't have a robust public transportation system in Madison. I know we have the train, but you have to get to the train. And so the question I'm asking is that so many Connecticut towns have put their affordable housing in areas that, quite frankly, the rest of the town opposes often. And is there a survey that anyone's ever done? Is there something this committee could do to find out if we were to put affordable housing north of 95, if we had some areas, how do we get at the heart of whether that would be a success or not.
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of a chicken and egg sort of thing is, you put populations where you have transit, and also if you develop a large population, transit, it becomes more of a possibility. And in this case, we'd be talking about, some local, sort of mini bus route. I don't know what it is in Madison, but in Clinton and the Middlesex County ones, it's nine town transit, where it's, they have these small buses that go between large employers and housing populations. So, if there were a big piece of land, highly developable based on soils and size and existing road network up in the northern part of Madison, where you could develop a larger multifamily mixed income complex of a couple hundred units, then that becomes an attractive stop of a non-fixed transit, bus route. So, you don't need to ignore development possibility in the more, suburban parts of town just because, they're not within a half mile of the existing train station. It's just, I think expectations need to be a little bit different about what's possible there. And I think, there are, and I think when we ask sort of our geographic questions, it's not, just in the center or somewhere else in town. I think we can, look at different, sort of historic village nodes or corridors up along, the state route that goes north-south up into I don't know, what, Durham, Middlefield, whatever that is. My geography is a little off this morning. 81? No, not 81.
The town of Madison's going to forgive you and
Yeah.
say he's going to study the map. He's going to learn what this town is.
I could draw it. I just can't name the name.
Well, that's a good start, John.
Anyway,
Nobody tell him he's going to go driving today.
70 something? Come on.
Let him keep guessing. You're giving us
Anyway.
lots of confidence in your plan. No, I'm
Thank you.
teasing.
Anyway,
Piggyback on-
yeah, go ahead.
Heather,
If
yes.
I could just piggyback on what John's saying, there's definitely a need for transportation that runs up 79 to Durham and into Middletown.
She
So-
gave it to you. 79.
I was gonna say it. I was gonna say it.
If there was a possibility of, doing that, and, maybe if it's like the philosophy of if you build it, they will come, encouraging more development up in the northern part of town, that transportation is very much needed now, so.
Mhm.
That's well said, Heather, and also a good reminder that this affordable housing plan, when Al's saying be as provocative as you can, or be as, I think like it can include things like that. That is could change a lot of different things. So I know that it's getting late, and I just want to ask John and Aaron, do you feel that you've sort of laid out what we would need to do so that you would be able to start to have this plan or a draft of the plan maybe by end of February?
I think we could pretty easily have the front 2/3 of it and have sort of an initial discussion about sort of what other towns have done in terms of the sort of menu of goals. So in March, we can maybe have that discussion with this committee about which of these sort of broad recommendations that other towns have looked at makes sense, and kind of narrow that stuff down. But I think certainly the what I call the sort of the front end, the front 2/3 in terms of housing and demographics and in terms of policy analysis, certainly through by February we can get through that stuff.
So that's helpful. And I think also on January 14th, we might hear a little bit more what the SCROG is already putting together, what they're already writing, so that we're not duplicating anything. Okay, I think that's really helpful. And if it's okay, I want to just move on quickly to our meeting schedule for the year ahead. And, I guess in my head, I had thought to do every other Friday. It's possible that as things get closer, we might need to do more Fridays. I also had said to Erin when she was doing her zoning presentation, I felt like there are a few things that we might want to just say, we're going to have 2 hours on this, and we're not going to really have a meeting. We're just going to listen to the 2 hours of this. And so I first want to ask people, do the Fridays work? Does this time still work? Do people feel like, yeah, this is on their calendar? And is it the every other Friday? So would anyone be opposed to meeting on January 7th and sort of mixing it up? Or would you prefer to just stick with what we have, which ironically is then our next meeting would be the 14th, the same day of the SCROG meeting? I can really go either way.
Well, the only thing I would say is that people probably, if they put it in their calendars, have worked around those openings already. So to move them maybe is an issue. It's not a huge one for me, but it might be for others that have other permanent meetings in their calendars.
I hear you. I'm wondering if anyone wants to speak up. And so I hear it's not an issue for Peter. Yeah.
I'm happy to do the 7th as well. I'm happy to mix it up. Fridays are generally good for me no matter what, particularly early Friday morning. So I'm fine with that.
I agree with that. And Andrea, you do too?
Yeah, I do. I think that we may have to start meeting weekly towards
Towards the end, right, towards when everything is culminating. Okay, and Matt and Andrea and I, we're gonna meet to go over the survey.
Yes.
Is that in the plans? So that gives us the week after New Year's to meet, during that week. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, we can do that. I'll pull up what I did and then,
Yeah,
yeah, let's, I'll communicate with you guys offline, Andrea.
okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, so we'll say our next meeting will be the 7th, and then we will have our meetings again, 8:30, and it'll be every other Friday. So Heather, is that something that, you'll notice that, or do I have to do anything to communicate that to anyone else, or?
I'm happy to draft that meeting calendar for you.
Thank you.
So that it can get posted. And I'll coordinate with Heather as far as the Zoom link. So just for your reference, your meetings can be via Zoom through April. And we'll just plan to have a meeting room reserved in case the laws change and you need to be in person. We can set aside meeting room A or something, but I'm sure that we'll hear something legislatively
Sure.
as far as possibility for hybrids or continuance of Zoom meetings.
Honestly, if they say we have to be in person in April, that means something has finally turned around for the good. So,
It would be May, Sarah. So everything, you can continue through April.
So my question, I didn't really even ask the question because the question on the table was in person or Zoom. And quite frankly, I mean, I make these decisions all the time in so many different arenas, and then it ends up Zoom, no matter what you decide. So my vote is for Zoom because I don't believe that in January and February we'll be meeting in person. And maybe it's just because I'm sitting here with a fever right now and feeling like I certainly wouldn't be at the meeting in person. So I don't know. Is there anyone who, I think the meetings would be better in person, but I just don't see it being realistic. Is everyone okay with keeping it on Zoom?
Yep.
Yes, I like it on Zoom, especially since it's at 8:30 in the morning. So, I can just walk out of the other room and come in here,
Yeah.
so, not being a morning person. Okay. All right. So that's good for me.
All right, so we'll keep it there. And so before we adjourn, I just want to go back over, I think Andrea, Wendy, and Matt will be looking at the second survey. It's possible that you'll want to be in touch with either John or Aaron as you think of questions and think of what they might want to know. Aaron and John will be preparing something, evaluating the existing housing stock, and present that maybe, if possible, on January 7th, or is that giving you too early a deadline? It doesn't have to be.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The very first thing, the existing housing stock, do you think you'd be ready to present that
Demographics.
January 7th?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and then maybe the regulatory analysis could be later in the month in January, Aaron, does that?
Yeah, I'm just looking at what days we are here.
So that,
So it would be the 21st is our next
Exactly.
one after that. Yep, sure.
okay. Okay, so with that, I think I'm gonna adjourn, and I
Okay.
hope,
Feel better, Sarah.
thank you, thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, all right.
Have a happy holidays and happy new year.
Happy holidays to everybody too.
Likewise.